Hi everyone, it's Nicole here for the Essentials by Ellen Winter 2015 release blog hop, and this card features the brand new Bold Blooms matching dies, and then the Fancy Thanks stamp set. To start, I'm using the Bold Blooms and stamping them with Versamark ink on watercolor cardstock. And then I'm going to heat emboss them with white embossing powder. Go ahead and sprinkle all of this on, and then I will heat set these all at once. I just apply the embossing powder kind of as I go. It helps me see where I've already stamped since I'm doing white on white here. You could also use clear embossing powder since the background is white. And I ended up doing a couple of sheets of images so that I could fill in that bottom kind of third of the card with these watercolored florals. But I'm only going to show the stamping and watercoloring on one of the sheets. They're both very, very similar. I just needed more images than what I got on this one sheet here. So I'm going to take these over and heat set all these with my heat tool. And then I'm going to grab some Ranger Distress inks. I'm going to use some spun sugar and picked raspberry here. I'm going to grab a Ranger paintbrush and a little bit of water and pick up that spun sugar ink off of my craft mat and watercolor in this large floral. Once I have added in that lighter color, I'm going to pick up some of the darker picked raspberry and drop it here and there all over the image. If it's a little too dark or a little bit too much of a definition in color, just apply a little bit more water and kind of let that swirl and move around. The embossing is going to help keep the watercolor inside the image so it doesn't spread out over the entire page. For my next flower, I'm going to apply a little scattered straw first, and then again go back in with my darker color, which is the spiced marmalade. I'm going to use a little spiced marmalade for this flower down here. I'm using an acrylic block to help keep my paper flat. I could have probably taped it to a piece of like a wood cutting board or something like that, but I didn't, so I'm just using my acrylic block to help it keep flat so that the watercolor doesn't go one direction or another. Sometimes it'll start kind of, moving once the paper bows up. So I just want to try to keep it as flat as possible. Over that spiced marmalade, I did apply a little of the picked raspberry for that third floral, and I'm applying some shabby shutters to the leaves and then pulling in a little of the Mowed Lawn Distress ink on top of that. Just keep moving it around, pick up some water, pick up some ink, till I get the saturation and the look that I want for my florals. I'm going to go ahead and move my acrylic block a little bit so I can work on this last flower here. I picked up a little of that spun sugar, there's not a whole lot left, on my craft mat, and then pulled in a little picked raspberry and also some spiced marmalade. I even went back over my first flower and added just a tiny bit of spiced marmalade till I got the look I wanted. And then I'm going to set that aside to air dry for a little bit. If you need it to dry quicker, you can go ahead and hit it with a heat tool. And then any of the ink that is on top of the embossed area, you can just wipe off with a soft dry cloth. I'm taking the matching Bold Blooms dies now and laying them over the flowers using a little Post-it tape to hold them in place, and then I'll run them through my Big Shot. I'm going to pop all of these out. For any of the duplicate shapes, I'm going to go ahead and just reposition those, place them over those other stamped and colored images, and run them through my Big Shot again until I have all of my images die cut out. Now I want to create a little bit of interest to my background, so I'm using a Tim Holtz bubbles stencil and some of the Spun Sugar Distress ink, and I'm applying it through the stencil using the mini ink blending tool and a very light hand. I don't want this to be overpowering. This is going to be directly on my card base, which is just created from some Nina Smooth White cardstock. I just wanted a little bit of a pattern there instead of a solid white card. Again, very, very lightly applying this. I don't want it perfect. I want it to definitely have those imperfections and be very light. Oh, and I didn't put it on the card base. I forgot. I did cut a smaller panel to place on the front of my card. That way I can pop it up with some foam adhesive. The panel measures 4 inches by 5¼ inches, which will fit on my standard A2 sized card. Now I simply need to take my flowers and greenery and move them around and position them until I get them how I want to look. And then I'm going to use some glue dots to adhere them. I like using the glue dots for this because you can put one glue dot kind of in the center of the image, put it in place, and then you're able to layer additional elements, whether it's the leaves or other flowers, kind of underneath. Before I do that, I am going to stamp my greeting using some black ink here. This is the black licorice ink from Lawn Fawn. This stamp set is the Fancy Thanks, and I stamped the word thanks right above kind of where my florals are going to go. Then I stamped the rest of my phrase, just a note of thanks, above that. Make sure I get it inked up really good. Now I can take those glue dots and position everything where I want them to go. And that's what I was talking about. With one little glue dot there, I'm still able to kind of tuck leaves under, tuck other florals under. And then once I have them all where I want them to go, I can go ahead and add additional glue dots or adhesive if I need to, if it needs further secured. But this way it allows me to still kind of be able to move and manipulate my elements and tuck them underneath each other. I'm going to go ahead and snip off all of that excess from the 3 sides, the 2 sides and the bottom there. And then any of those little leftover pieces, I'm going to go ahead and use by tucking them along the sides of my card. It gives the illusion of having additional flowers, and it fills in the design, and it uses up elements that you've already created. I'm even going to use the tip of that leaf there along the left edge. Now I'm going to take some foam adhesive, place it on the back of my panel, and then place it right on my card. I hope you've enjoyed this video showcasing new stamps and dies from the Essentials by Ellen Winter 2015 release. The supplies I've used are listed and linked below the video on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.